This is Andrew for CollectionDX.com taking a look at Bandai's new Deluxe Chogokin VF-19 Advanced. This will be part one of the review, where I'm going to focus looking on the main Valkyrie itself because, frankly, all of its accessories are a bit of a mess to deal with, but we'll get to that in the following video. So, this is another new modern Macross toy, meaning that it's probably about a foot long in fighter mode, and kind of follows in the same convention of being about like 1/60-ish scale, kind of like what Yamato/Arcadia does. Here is the VF-19 Advanced next to Bandai's Deluxe Chogokin VF-25 Messiah Valkyrie. And I know some of you out there are probably wondering, hey, when did Isamu join the SMS? Well, that actually happened at the end of the second Macross Frontier movie, The Wings of Goodbye, where he burst onto the screen in a familiar-looking Valkyrie, more or less this one, and delivered his trademark line about, you know, Ikuze kawaii ko-chan, yahoo! Anyway, so what Bandai did is they presumably based this off of that version because they do own the merchandising rights to Macross Frontier. But honestly, I also think they're going to be using this to make Macross 30 variants from the PS3 game, especially that pink one. But anyway, so like most modern Valkyries, it can store its landing gear underneath, or it has its landing gear underneath. It has a gun pod stored here. Note that the gun pod tries to bend itself a bit so they can still be pointing forward, even though the underside of the VF-19 is usually pretty curved looking. But yeah, that's kind of how this one does it. And just for a quick comparison, I do not have Arcadia's YF-19, but I do still have a bunch of Yamato VF-19s. So here's the Fire Valkyrie alongside the VF-19 Advanced. And you can see very similar size, similar styling, although this is based more on the original prototype from Macross Plus. And if you ever played some of the old PS1 games, you know that they just made the very first production VF-19s identical to the Plus one. So anyway, other gimmicks you have in fighter mode, you can pull up canopy, and I'm doing this slowly because mine was apparently not glued properly, but it does slide back in and out. And inside there's a tiny little Isamu wearing his Macross Plus uniform. Oddly enough, he's supposed to be like 40 years old in the Frontier era, so I don't know if he's still wearing his original flight suit or if he upgraded to a new one, but that's kind of what Bandai went with here. The landing gear is kind of interesting. The nose wheel actually will fold in half as it's going down in order to take up less space inside the Valkyrie. And as you're doing this, please be careful around these little sharp edges on the landing gear because they can certainly draw blood. Also, you can damage them a little bit if you get your finger caught on them. Oh yeah, and also remember, as you're putting the front landing gear down, you have to make sure that the little tow hook here is actually facing this way, kind of angled towards the back of the fighter. So that allows you to bring down the front gear. And for the main wheels, it's pretty easy. You just flip them in. And they should be alright like that. And I just noticed that that door wasn't quite closed. But anyways, so other things you can do with the VF-19 Advanced in fighter mode, it can do high speed mode, and when you're doing it, kind of be careful not to pull out the wing root. But basically you have this little double die-cast hinge joint, and there's a little slot there that will go into the wing as you push the whole assembly inward. So do that, keep that thing in there, angle the tail fins inward, and I'll come around and do it on this side. You can kind of hear there's a little bit of clicking as you move this around, so it's a little bit more deliberate and secure than what I've heard about the Arcadia YF-19. But anyway, this is high speed mode, seen briefly in the OVA. And the interesting thing about this particular iteration of the VF-19, despite the fact that it is pretty much, you know, the Macross Plus version, all of the red and black has been swapped around. I'm not sure if that was a deliberate choice with the CG model or somebody just screwed up and they just kind of went with it. But still, it's kind of a very subtle variation on the Macross Plus version. The toy looks really nice. It does come together pretty well, although there's kind of a lot going on with its transformation, so not everything is lining up very nicely for me. Particularly this wing hinge, it's supposed to go down all the way like this, where it's like flush, but on mine it doesn't quite want to go in there, so that kind of leaves a bit of a gap up here. But regardless, I'll show you the removable intake covers, pretty much standard issue on most Valkyrie toys. So you just kind of work that in there and they will snap in place. And again, work it in there and it snaps in place. And here we go. Alright, so next part of this video, I'm going to transform this toy into Gwalk mode. So with the transformation to Gwalk mode, you're going to notice a lot of similarities to the Yamato/Arcadia design. And some of that is the fact that, well, there's only so many ways you can make a VF-19 transform. Other parts make it feel like a little too close to what we've seen before. And I'll let you be the judge of why that is. So to start off here, you're going to lift up these side panels around the head where it's stored. Well, you can try to lift them up. They actually will come up themselves as soon as we get to the shield. Now with the shield, this is actually connected to the neck cover right here, with the head being in the middle of them. So when you lift this off, just kind of separate it from where it's tabbed into the arms. As you lift this off, this whole thing comes off. And you can see there's the head in there. And for this part, the way you transform it, there's just you can see there's a sliding joint. You push the black portion in. And then it will all slide all the way into the shield, into a nice little solid unit. So that's interesting that they did make the shield kind of its own little all-in-one thing along with the neck piece. Although there is a separate neck cover just for Gwalk mode. So yeah, if you're going to do Gwalk mode and you want this to be covered up, you still have to put this thing in here. And I got it backwards. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. So to continue on, you're going to disengage the sides of the wing root here, and there's basically a tab here and a tab here. And with this, to make it rotate downward, you actually pull up on it a little bit. So it's like you pull these out, and obviously there's a tab right in there. Just kind of pull that out, and if you want to rotate it out of the way, you do have to, again, just sort of pull up. And this is hard to do as I'm reaching around, but there it goes. So yeah, that's going to pull up. You can just sort of leave this down, as long as you leave yourself enough space to rotate the legs. So with this, again, very similar to the Arcadia Yamato design, there is a tab in here going from the leg into the main body, and you just kind of start bringing that out, as well as just sort of getting it off of the shoulder part here, and you just saw the gun pod fell off. We'll leave that aside for now. So kind of get that out of there as best as you can, and bring down the whole Gwalk joint. I can leave this up here. Now with the leg, it gets really interesting. They did a lot of cool stuff here. This is where they sort of borrowed from very old garage kits. So what you're going to do is pull the foot out, and that is going to raise up this panel right here. And what this panel does is it comes up and out, and I like to feed it through this way, just so the inner tab kind of lines up, and then you just get it up over this tab on the top part of the leg, And here you go. Now this is all filled in. You don't need a separate part or anything. And there's also a panel on the back of the leg that comes out. And here we're going to flip down the tail fin and fold up one of its rudders. So that is that. And you can just sort of mess around with the leg for a bit. And you can pull it up like that. Also, one thing I've noticed is that this little belly plate tends to pop open. I think it's just that it's kind of tight in here. Alright, so I'm just going to do the other leg off screen and then show you the rest of this. So, gear walking right along, I suddenly remembered why I wanted to do that off camera. That is because on this wing root, this particular tab right here is very, very tight. And I thought I already shaved it down enough so that it worked better, but apparently not, and I had to get something in here to pry it out. So if you're having that problem, I think a lot of people actually are having that problem with this tab, just try to shave it down, because it does not need to be that tight. And honestly, it doesn't affect anything because there's still a ton of other tabs that keep the wing root locked in place. And also, before I deal with the arms, I just want to show you the opening leg bay gimmick, which can be used in fighter mode. Unfortunately, you do have to untab the whole wing assembly before you can actually move this in place. You can have it deployed in fighter mode as well, but again, you have to do everything, you have to do all this stuff first, and then you get to move the door out on the weapons bay. So it has that one missile that we all remember from that one scene in Macross Plus. You can take it out, and it's a missile, you know. It looks nice, it's boxy, and it's really just meant to spend most of its life living inside of the VF-19's legs. So this is all on double hinge, so it looks good. It looks nice. There's nice detail on the inside. But moving on, let's talk about the upper body. So similar to other VF-19 toys, you're just going to take this up, and this is going to reposition just enough so that you can tab this all in place. This is going to come forward just a bit so you can have everything get lined up. Actually, I made a mistake there. Yeah, you just really want all this to get lined up just like that. And you're just going to do that again on this side and make sure that all this doesn't come undone as you are doing this. So this thing has some nice clicky joints for gear walk mode. And a cool thing is that they sort of took a page from Yamato's VF-19, where the thigh swivel is actually, it's not in the knee, it's actually up in the thigh. So this whole thing is actually moving in more of a proper A stance, although not that Yamato didn't do a decent job themselves. So you're going to finish off Battroid mode. You're going to pull this forward. This whole thing comes up on its own joint, and you can bring the arms down for the VF-19's much maligned Gwalk mode, where it doesn't seem quite as refined as some of the other Valkyries out there. And you can just sort of leave these right here. Make sure you're not... Oops. Yeah, make sure these all stay down too, because when you move the head, you can sometimes accidentally pop those up. And you don't want them up while you're messing with the shoulder joints. Alright, almost done. To finish this off, you just need to pull out shoulder flaps, and they're on a little double hinge in there. There's no sliding mechanism, it's just there on double hinge, and you pull them out. Pop up this part of the forearm and flip out the hands, and ooh, wow, that looks a lot like the Yamato design. The hands actually do have something different going about them. They have a ball jointed thumb rather than just a hinged thumb. So to just tidy this up, stick that on there and straighten that out. And there's a tab in the palm that goes into the handle of the gun pod. So this will all fit in there pretty nicely, pretty quickly. So yeah, here is the Bandai version of the VF-19 in Gwalk mode. They still have ball jointed ankles, although there is actually a dedicated kind of a hinge like right down here. This is all, you can see this is all die cast. It's very nice. So you're just kind of pushing this joint back and also messing around with where the ball joint is to get everything to look nice in Gwalk mode. You can get these inward a bit more, though you are limited by the cuffs of the VF-19's legs. So yeah, this is it's pretty good. Feels pretty sturdy. Keep that kind of art up there. And but again, not really anything we have not seen before. So I understand if it seems kind of underwhelming. Things will get more interesting when I get to all the armor and stuff. And also you have to be aware of where you put the arms in relation to the wings, because, well, this is just kind of a flaw with the VF-19 design. But yeah. Anyways, let's continue on into Battroid mode. So the conversion to Battroid mode is going to be another instance of a lot of deja vu, but they still did some interesting things that correspond to what they did with the whole leg assembly. So you're going to pop all this out, free the upper body. And just a little bit tighter on this side. Anyways, come on now. Let go of it. More quality gone out of control. But, yeah, come on. Because what this is all going to do is you're just going to pull the whole leg assembly. There it goes. Outward. And this also exposes how the whole lurks section kind of moves on its own. You're going to angle these back so that you have enough room to raise the doors on either side of the head. And you can just let that pop out and bring up the head. So you're also going to want to pop this little thing on the back here out. And this will all extend. So it just kind of comes up, and there's this whole multi-joint mechanism on the inside here. Now with this part, this is interesting. There's a lot going on here. You are going to want to just kind of flip these out of the way for now. They just go down, and you need to push forward these sections of the chest. So on most of VF-19s, these are usually fixed in place, but you have to just pull them forward on this toy, and this is how stuff actually fits in there in fighter mode. So yeah, these things you can get kind of stuck sometimes. So, ow. So yeah, you just kind of have to work on it. And also, you're probably noticing there seems to be kind of a joint here that turns, and that's because this thing actually does have a waist joint, which is pretty dang neat. You know, I think I'm going to do this part off camera as well, but I will show you at least one side of it. So for this mode, what you want, for Battroid mode, you want these forward, they got one little sliding joint, and you want this down, like that. So this is fighter mode, this is Battroid mode, so please be aware this is what has to happen when you go back into Battroid mode. Alright, be right back. Alright, I managed to get that thing down, and Please note that only the front part is what's moving, so you kind of have to like really get your finger in there to move it. And again, these inner panels, this is for Battroid mode. These will all line up a nice vertical position. So, and push these little things forward, little tube things. So, for this part, and it's going to be a little similar to the Yamato design, but difference here is you're going to pull these out, and a little black part comes with it, and that brings the canards forward. So again, there's a little tiny piece here. That's part of the canards, and that's what they move around and hinge on. So for back here, you're going to, actually you're going to work this out a little bit, let that pop open, arrange this down a little bit, bring this down, and this will come up on that little double hinge that we've seen before. And be sure not to detach the canopy in the process of doing all this. So this is going to come out and up, and it's going to kind of softly lock in place. Now there's a slot, or there's a tab here that's going to go into a slot underneath the nose. You want to just get those all aligned as best as you can. So we're all kind of like this for Battroid mode. There's nothing you have to do with this part, so that is different than the Yamato design. And so all this is going to come up and over, as it usually does with the VF-19. And as you're bringing it up, you just want to make sure that these are going to kind of be like in this position, little canards here. They're going to end up inside and underneath, sort of, but they're sort of sandwiched between this outer part of the spine and the upper part of the body. So this is all going to just kind of come up and over. And as you're doing this, make sure that everything is more or less in its proper place. You might have to pull this forward or back a little bit to mess with it. And this is another case where I'm making it look a lot harder than it actually is, because I am currently bent over a camera trying to do this. Oh, I just get caught in there. That's why I wasn't going. Alright, so yeah, again, you have to really be careful with all that stuff in there, or it won't work otherwise. So again, the canards end up in here, in this little area. And this part right here, this is actually what will lock everything together. It just comes down, goes into a tab on top there. So, and you can see we kind of got already our waist joint moving here. So for this part, you're going to basically bring these up and around. There's basically as an inner die cast in here, just right in there that it moves around on, and it's going to come up, basically get swung this way, so clockwise, well on this side at least. So what you're going to want to do is just kind of move the hip out on this joint and then bring it up, and then you heard that it clicked in place. So that is that. Fortunately, one of the ball joints is really tight on one side, so maybe I'll show you on this side first. Alright, so do this. This will all click in place, and you can start to bring these things down into the proper position. Again, this one hip joint is kind of tight. So for these, as I told you, you kind of have to pull up. You pull up on the thing, and that gives it the ability to actually rotate. So do that, and you can kind of leave these pointing forward as you're doing so. This part actually comes up, it's on its own little hinge, and it's going to be repositioned so that it's more or less lined up like this, although it is kind of free floating. It does not really lock in place. It's more of like a rear skirt joint. So bring all this back together, pop this down, give him a repositioned leg. And similar on this side, you're going to pop this all forward, bring this down, and start to reposition things for cleaning up Battroid mode. So the wings have this interesting mechanism going on there. There's a whole like double hinge thing in here. And what's actually going to happen is you leave this kind of in this position, then this whole part slides inward. So line up the hinge with the little slot in here, and this is going to slide in. So that makes the wing a lot more compact and keeps it neatly in place for Battroid mode. So again, you're just going to kind of get it there, and the whole thing will slide in place. Slide it up as much as you can. Get his arms out of the way, and you can slide these into position. And here we go. One last thing is flip up that little tab in the crotch plate and just snap that all the way in place. Alright, so here we are in Battroid mode, and I'm going to show you the accessories that most correspond to it. Back in a flash. So the main thing you can do with the VF-19 Advanced in Battroid mode is give it some new hands. And you can do this in Gearwalk mode as well. So you get all kinds of hands. You got the regular fists, fixed pose gun holding hand, and splayed hands. And they're all very nice looking in there. As you can see, just slightly beefier than the ones that actually fit inside. So these are just on a ball joint. Just pop them out. And they actually do have a squared off interior, so they kind of conforms to the rest of the forearm. So if you kind of want them in one position as opposed to another one, you sort of have to make sure you're not going to hit the sides there. Fortunately, the hatch for the inner fists does kind of get out of the way, so it allows you to rotate them a bit more cleanly. And with the gun holding hand, you just kind of, it's sort of rubbery, so you just really pry those fingers open a bit, work it in there, and here we go, gun holding hand. Alright, so here we are. It also has the whole removable helmet gimmick, which shows off the little eyes on the inside, much like with the Yamato, both the Yamato and the Arcadia YF-19. So, yeah, there's all that detail in there from that one scene in Macross Plus. It's nice that they included that here. They didn't really have to, but it's sort of expected these days for VF-19, YF-19 toys. This is both, oddly enough. But yeah, so it's a fairly clean design, kind of a nice big beefy Battroid, as it were. A lot of articulation, pretty much, although it is pretty much the same as say Yamato's take on the subject matter. This is the VF-19S from Emerald Force. But yeah, you can see same size, pretty much the same size. You just have to make this guy a little shorter to make him the same size. Oh yeah, because I didn't actually do the hip thing on this, so they are actually the same size. Huh, that's just my own personal preference there. But anyway, these two are interesting. They certainly borrowed a fair bit from Yamato's design. I mean, they did that before with the VF high metal figures. But they added their own cool touches too, like the ability to fill in the legs without using extra parts. Yeah, and the kind of the whole interior mechanism that goes along with it is interesting, but a bit fiddly. But otherwise, focusing on this toy's articulation, there's a kind of a hinge joint right here. This in here is a die-cast ball joint. So, and there actually is a screw there, so you can adjust the tension a little bit by yourself. Nice clicky joints, and again, you still have the bicep swivel, or sorry, the knee swivel or thigh swivel from before. So you can do some, typical poses. The big difference here is that they actually managed to work a waist joint into the fray. And it works pretty well. I mean, it's not the most like dramatic amount of movement, but it still gives you just a little bit extra that you wouldn't see normally. And it actually is like this whole thing, the whole spine is actually rotating a little bit around this main central block here. So it's like the spine and then the front part of the nose, which is all connected to this central kind of groin block, and that's how that moves. So that is certainly very, very neat. The last accessory for Battroid mode, without going into the full-on crazy armor parts, would be a pinpoint barrier punch effect. And this is kind of cool. It's sort of rubbery, but it's a swirly energy punch, and there's these 3 things you stick on it. And these are actually keyed to only go on a certain way, so you just kind of have to feel it out and look for, like, this one has like a tiny little, sort of a T-shape to it with a notch on the bottom there. So that's how it works on that side. And there's essentially just a regular hand thing in here that you pop into the toy like the other hands. Although it can be a little hard to tell where it all is just because of... I rotated that around the wrong way. But anyway, make sure that this is like staying in place before you do anything. You might want to hold it down as you are popping new hands in and out. So there we go. So yeah, he's got a pinpoint barrier punch. Oops. One thing I will say, this part does kind of come up a bit more than on the Yamato toys. Even though there's like this thing trying to hold it in place. But yeah, there's a cool punch effect. It's neat. I don't think it was essential, but I don't begrudge them for including it. It's a nice idea. So other than that, it's a VF-19. There's been a whole lot of VF-19 toys over the years, and this one, in some... Oh, and this thing also moves forward. So it's pretty much on par with the Yamato offerings. It is certainly less expensive than Arcadia's YF-19, and I think a lot of people are... See, this kind of stays on there. Anyway, a lot of people are looking to this as kind of a much lower cost alternative, because it's only like, I think it was around like 22,000 yen, so around like $200 with today's exchange rate. So yeah, it's definitely does not have the premium pricing of Arcadia's more boutique releases. And it looks pretty good. Oddly enough, despite the fact this is sort of based on a CG model, one that probably couldn't transform because it was only in one scene. But this toy, I think, has a much more kind of anime look to it. It's more chiseled in its overall lines. It's got kind of a little bit more heroic proportions to it. Again, it's not too different, but weird things are like how the arms have this very organic taper to them with like a muscle in here. So that's kind of where I'm getting the more like 90s OVA vibe from it, which is weird because in the Plus OVA, it's not really like that organic looking with the action scenes, but yeah, you can kind of see there's definitely an influence there. Actually, I would say it looks a lot like the VF-19 does in Dynamite 7. So all those VF-19s that you see. But other than that, it's pretty good. I'm going to reserve like final thoughts for the second part of this review, where I'm going to talk about all of the accessories. So until next time, keep watching CollectionDX.com.